January 20th, 2001, interviewing Millard Black. Michelle Dojiri is on cataloging, Russell Nakaishi is on sound, and Jason Inoue is running camera, and Richard Hawkins is asking questions. Okay. Please give us your name and your birth date.
Millard L. Black, 7/5/24.
And where were you born, Millard?
Whittier, California.
And you grew up in Whittier?
No, I just went there to be born. My mother had a midwife delivered in her house.
And where did you spend most of your childhood then?
And we moved to Huntington Park, California.
How many? Oh, I'm sorry.
I was, I guess, about 2 years old when we moved to Huntington Park.
How many brothers and sisters did you have?
I had three brothers, one sister.
And what are their names?
My oldest brother is an engineer and musician combination. I have another brother that lives in Baja, California, and a sister that lives in Costa Mesa.
What did your mom and dad do for a living?
My dad was a machinist, and ultimately became the manager of Bashross Oil Tool Company. He invented a lot of the machinery that made oil well rigs.
And your mother?
My mother was a housewife.
Were your parents born and raised in California, or had they migrated here?
No, my dad came from Baltimore, Maryland, and my mother came from Bellingham, Washington, opposite ends of the country. And they met in Los Angeles and got married.
The neighborhood in which you grew up, was it predominantly Caucasian? What was the ethnic mix?
It was almost exclusively Caucasian.
Did you know any Japanese Americans or come across any Japanese Americans in your youth?
Yeah, when we were in Huntington Park, my mother had a produce truck, came in there, got fresh, really fresh produce from the Japanese American truck farms out in Gardena area.
Do you happen to remember their names?
I'm sorry, I don't.
Okay. Generally describe your childhood. What was it like? A happy childhood, full of activity?
Yes, it was a very happy childhood. My mother wanted us to have music, so we all played some instrument. I played the harp at one time, played the piano at one time, and played bass fiddle.
And with music, was that a big part of your childhood?
Yes, very much so. When I was 6 years old, I was in the Hollywood Baby Orchestra under the conductorship of Billy Barty, who passed away just recently. Same age I am.
Billy Barty, the entertainer.
Yeah.
That's what. And what instrument did you play?
I played the bass fiddle.
Does your wife want to get by?
I'm sorry. Did you want to cross by, Lorraine?
No, I'm just watching.
Oh, okay.
Actually, she's in the shop.
Unless I'm in the way.
She wants to have a seat right here. Come down.
Yeah, why don't you come on down here?
And she can sit right here. Stop tape.
Okay. Let's see. We were talking about your musical background. Your mother was very, very fond of music, and you had played 3 different types of instruments.
All of us did.
Yeah. With the music, how far did you take that? How many orchestras, bands did you play?
Well, played in a junior high school band, and in Huntington Park High School, I was in band and orchestra. And we played at other high schools' dances and all the good old music of that period of time.
What's your favorite song from back then?
Oh, there's so many of them. Done by Frank Sinatra and Larry Harry James, and all those great conductors.
Paper I don't even know.
Okay. Typically, your experience then through junior high and high school had a lot to do with the music and
Yes.
participating in there.
Very much so.
Your life like that, you were going to play in orchestras and bands. What other activities did you do?
Oh, I did some track. In high school, I was a miler. And I just pursued a lot of the musical courses.
Who were your heroes as a child?
At what period of time?
Childhood, junior high, high school. Okay.
Well, that's a kind of a hard pick. I think Franklin Roosevelt was a hero. And I liked the music directors, Harry James, etc.
What did you like about Roosevelt?
Well, I thought he brought the country out of the Depression and got the economy back in order. So that was one of his aces.
Were you involved in any church activities?
Yes, from the time I was, I guess, about 6 years old, and ultimately through the Methodist Church, I found my wife. I played in a church orchestra there in Huntington Park, and the conductor moved to downtown Los Angeles, First Methodist Church of L.A., and then our music band went out to Florence Heights Methodist Church, and that's where I met my wife.
How old?
So
were
the
you?
church brought us together.
How old were you when you met your wife?
15.
And how old was she?
15. Actually, she's older than I am.
By how
About
much?
2 weeks.
Do you remember the first thing you said to your wife?
Well, it's kind of funny. I had a girlfriend I was going with, and she gave a 15 birthday party for me, and that's when I met Lorraine. So the girlfriend that was holding the party for me, that's when I started going with Lorraine.
When you were a kid, junior high, high school, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to have my own business, which never came about, but I was interested in photography quite a bit. And I actually worked in a camera shop, Broadway department store out in Hollywood for 2 or 3 years while I was going to school.
What did it mean to be an American to you back at that time, junior high, high school?
Well, I always respected the flag, and last of all the benefits we got from the kind of freedom we had.
Did you have a lot of friends that you hung out with?
Yeah, my main buddy was Wendell Plugger, whom I met in kindergarten, and all the way to when he passed away here about 3 years ago.
Was primarily you hung around with Wendell, or was there a group of you that?
Well, yeah, there was a couple of us going on with at that time. Jack Nichols and Hubby Edwards. There were about 5 of us that pretty much went everywhere.
And among your friends, did they or you experience or see any kind of prejudice?
I don't think so in the Army. I admit to some prejudice before that time, especially after Pearl Harbor.
Okay. We'll just jump ahead then. On December 6th, 1941, the day before Pearl Harbor, what were your plans?
On the 6th?
Yeah, the day before.
Well, we were going hunting out in the desert, Palmdale, Lancaster area, which was a lot less settled than it is now.
Mm-hmm. And, yeah, we could second. December 6th, 1941, you were out in the desert to hunt. You had mentioned experiencing or having some prejudice prior to December 7th. So December 6th, prior to that, what kind of prejudice were you discussing?
Well, I think that I really didn't have a strong prejudice against anyone. But of course, when December 7th came along, well, I was prejudiced towards the Japanese at that point. I have to admit to that.
Did you distinguish between Japan, the nation island, or did you and Japanese Americans, or was it just Japanese as a whole?
As a whole.
Okay, so I got to ask you that question in a way where you'll say it more completely. So let me think about it. Okay, your prejudice feelings toward Japanese after Pearl Harbor.
Yeah. I'd seen them in the neighborhood. They come, like I say, my mom bought produce off of those produce trucks, and we knew it was fresh all the time. In fact, we had a Japanese fisherman that brought in fresh fish right from San Pedro.
How did you feel?
I mean, that was fresh fish, just caught.
How did you feel about those Japanese Americans that you saw then?
Oh, I liked all of them. Food coming.
After December 7th, how did you feel?
Yeah, I think everybody was caught up in kind of a hysteria at that time. Very few that, thought much of it just after the bombing of Pearl Harbor.
You were out in the desert hunting.
Yeah, with 4 of my buddies out in the Lancaster, Palmdale area. And actually the farmers out there like to see us come to flush the fields from the rabbits. Rabbits mowed it down. But you don't hit many rabbits with a .22. They're not really a good target.
And that's when you heard about the bombing of Pearl Harbor?
We were on our way home in Bouquet Canyon between Lancaster and North Hollywood.
And you heard it over the car radio?
Mm-hmm. And we knew then that it was going to change our lives.
How did you think it would change your lives?
It would save my life.
How did you think the bombing of Pearl Harbor would change your life?
Well, we knew that war had been declared, and we'd probably wind up in it.
What did you think about that? What did you know about war or think about war at that time?
I hadn't really thought of it. I wasn't brought up with a war on my head.
After President Roosevelt declared war on Japan,
Mm-hmm.
where did you go? Did you go back home to family? Did you go out with your friends? What did you do?
Well, we all just kind of went to a malt shop and toasted over a malt that we'd probably be in the service as soon as we got out of high school. They did let us finish high school.
So what grade were you in, and how old were you at the time that you heard this news?
I would have been 17, and what was the other part of that?
How old were you, and in what grade were you in?
I was in 11th grade.
Did you know that there was an executive order signed to intern Japanese Americans?
No.
Did you hear about that?
I heard about it.
How did you hear about it, and did you discuss it among friends, and who did you discuss it among?
Through radio, but yeah, I have friends we talked about it, and we thought that we're going to be involved in this, so take care. So in 1943, when March 43, my wife and I were married, and on the 26th of March, I reported for duty.
to go back to the finding out about the executive order that interned Japanese Americans, with you and your friends talking about that, the feeling at the time, there was a hysteria, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
Was there much discussion about that? Was there different points of view put across? Was it just, oh my gosh, there's a war, what's happening? Kind of describe that a little more in detail, if you could, your discussions at the malt shop with your
Mm-hmm.
friends.
Well, there's not much to say on that. For me, we were kind of focusing on what our future was going to be. But I know that there was a lot of injustice on pulling them out from their homes and a lot of them never being reimbursed for what was taken away from them.
Did you know about that at the time, or did you learn about that later?
I learned about that later. I never realized they were taking all this stuff away from them.
And then, let's see, you had mentioned you got married in March of 43?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you had courted your wife for how many years?
3 years. 15 years old we were.
So you married at 18?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. You were just married, and then you joined the service, or you were
I was
drafted.
drafted. And I reported for duty in L.A. and sent up to camp in Salt Lake City, Utah, right near there. It was colder than the Dickinson up there still. That's where we got our shots.
I'm sorry, can we stop?
To watch the.
Which one?
Mine? Or his? Oh, let me adjust to. Do you want to stop camera? Yeah, I'll try. Okay. Okay.
Run it like a narrative.
Yeah.
Do you need a minute?
Yeah, this we'll try.
And speed?
Got speed. Okay. You received your draft notice in the mail,
Mm-hmm.
or did you?
Yeah, I received that. Backtracking a little bit, I tried to get in the Navy, and they wouldn't take me because of my eyes. Right off the first one, I was colorblind, and the other was my eyes. So I wound up as being a forward observer for the field artillery. I kind of think that's kind of unusual, don't you? The Navy wouldn't take me because of my eyes. I get over there, I'm a forward observer, running the radio.
Where did you do your training?
We went from Salt Lake City to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and got all my basic there, and to field maneuvers. And the division was going to go to Florida, Mississippi for training. And I'd heard about the camps down in the swamps. So they were looking for a radio operator overseas replacement. So I trained as a battery clerk. And my hand goes up like this. I didn't ever be a battery clerk over there. They lie. But I wound up being a forward observer in the field artillery, starting at about Rapido River and Monte Cassino.
Going back to your training, what had you heard about the camps in Mississippi?
Well, full of swamps and lots of bugs.
What did that mean, full of swamp?
Well, it's the bayous or whatever you call them.
Okay. How and what did you feel when you decided to go and fight in the war, when you were drafted? What was your feeling?
Well, it was something I had to do. I didn't particularly like all of it, but when you start out and you strip and go through a line and you get the full treatment with shots coming at you from both sides. They inoculate us for just about everything that you can think of.
When you were drafted and went to training, what did you think it would accomplish? What did you think you would accomplish?
I think we had it accomplished keeping freedom both overseas and here.
Did your brother serve in the war?
Yes, and a brother that served in South Pacific, another brother that was an engineer and finished his education at University of Michigan. And from that, he was a sanitation engineer for a big Air Force camp in the South, Birmingham.
Your brother that served in the Pacific, what branch of the military and what did he do?
He was in the Army. And I really don't know what job he had.
Did you two ever discuss it?
Oh, yeah. We have.
What kind of discussions would you have?
Well, this quite a bit after we all were out that we can kind of compare notes.
Notes about?
What we were doing in the various spots.
Did you discuss how, what battles you were in, what kind of combat experience you had? Or was it more about the logistics of where you were?
Yeah, I would say that was true, though. Just general. We didn't get into the real experiences. Excuse me. Makes your mouth dry.
No problem. Take as many. Did your mom and dad support you entering the service?
Yes.
Were they proud of you?
Yes, they were.
Your childhood friends, how many of them joined? What were their feelings? Did you get a chance to talk with them as you all went through the experience of being trained and then being sent out?
Well, my very best buddy was in the Army Air Force in Italy, stationed at Vosges Air Base, and he did 50 missions while he was over me. I was on the ground where he was doing his 50 missions. And I had the opportunity while I was in Italy. We had just liberated Rome. And I knew where he was. So I managed to hitchhike on military aircraft down to see him and hold a one-night stand over there. And they were going on a mission the next morning. And I got sent in on the mission. Basically, they were bombing the Ploesti oil fields and the ball bearing factories in Germany and other countries around there. That really helped put Hitler out of business. Shut down the tank production, and tanks didn't have any fuel in them.
Did he come back?
Yeah, he did 50 missions and came home.
Did you lose any of your friends in the war?
No.
All of you came back? Did you come back to the same area, the same town? After leaving Europe, come back to the United States the same
Yes.
place? Did you meet and talk about your experiences?
Very little. I didn't want to think about it too much because I would get nightmares that I was back over there and cold, and that's one thing, it's cold and mud.
Did your friends have the same kind of feeling and experiences? Or were some of them wanted to talk about it, some didn't? What was that like?
Most of us didn't, I don't think. Only in about the last 10 months, 10 years, have I got to the point where I can talk about it.
What was your first impression of the Army when you were drafted and sent to be trained?
Well, something I had to do. So the impression was in Missouri, you got a variety of weather. It could be hot in the dickens in summertime and freezing at night in the winter.
Were there particular hardships in basic training or things that you felt could be easily done? And what were some of those things?
Well, putting up with extreme weather back there was one factor. And there really isn't a whole lot of bad experiences in training. We didn't have. It was pretty hard doing the 25 march that we all did with a captain that was a West Point graduate and a football player. Perfect physical condition. He set the pace. So we had to string it out like that.
In basic training, were there, was it predominantly Caucasian, or were there any ethnics?
I don't recall a lot of ethnics. A lot of them were Texas. Oh, in basic training, no. I don't recall any minority groups. Go ahead.
And what kind of training did you do? What were they training you to do?
Well, physical fitness was one of the main things. But then teach you some skills with the rifle. And you qualified on the carbine. And let's see. I mean, it was a lot of good stuff, and some of the stuff you didn't like so much, like KP.
After basic training, where were you sent then to?
We went just for the overnight maneuvers, and then when they asked for overseas replacements, I was told it would be a battery clerk, but they didn't let me do any clerking over there. Was on a gun crew for a while, was a telephone lineman for a while, and then they made a radio operator for the Forward Observer.
And but back in the United States, you were trained to do?
Trained to be a battery clerk.
Battery clerk.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of training did you receive when you got to Europe to do those other kind of jobs?
None. When they put me on the FO team, I said, I don't know anything about this operation of this radio. In the States, they take about a 4 or 5 week course on it. He said, well, sit down over here. I'll give you a 10-minute course. You can run that radio. So that's kind of ironic, too.
Once you received your training here in the States and was going to be sent to Europe, where did you embark to go to Europe? From where did you embark?
Right out of, it was in Maryland. I'm trying to think of that place in Maryland where they had a deportation. Let me think just a minute.
From where did you leave the U.S. to reach Europe?
Newport News, Virginia.
How did you get over there then?
It was on a USS Breckenridge, a troop carrier. We had over 10,000 aboard that ship. Most of the GIs were in the hold, 5 bunk high. That's pretty close quarters. You sit up in bed and you knock on the bed above you. It was what they call unescorted. They did a zigzag across the Pacific, but Atlantic, excuse me. This is what the zigzag was for, because if a submarine, you make a harder target. and we landed at Oran, North Africa. About, what was it, 70 days? Because of, I was in field artillery, they used some of our guys for gun watch. You know, I loved that gun watch because you got fresh air up there. Just take your sleeping bag and roll up in a gun turret.
Did you know many of the guys on the ship, or just how many guys did you know on the ship?
Well, it was pretty much a 36. I knew quite a few of them.
And you were able to get topside how many times?
I made it a point to go up there at night.
Okay, we'll wait for the...
Decks down below.
Oh, yeah.
Because none of these guys were seamen. And we went across when it was a maximum list on both sides. That ship was just rolling like this.
Okay, you're on your way to Europe, crossing the North Atlantic in what ship was that?
General Breckinridge.
What kind of ship was that?
It was a troop carrying ship for 10,000 or a few more soldiers.
Now, you had a unique opportunity to go topside. Tell me a little bit about that and what you did when you were topside.
Well, it was pretty smelly down below. The guys were, half at least, were sick. And being in field artillery, they made us auxiliary gun watch. And so I took my bedroll and slept in gun turret. And I have to get up for a while for duty and then stay top deck. It was a lot nicer up there.
What was the duty as an auxiliary gunner on the ship?
We were just to observe and be ready to help with the gun crew.
Did you see anything that would call you to arms?
Fortunately, even though it was a rough trip, we never had any action from the Germans on our crossing.
Describe the weather on your crossing.
It was cold and very wet, and supposedly it was one of the worst crossings that they had in all those years.
Describe the movement of the ship in that kind of weather.
Well, they were carrying a zigzag course, and supposedly running faster than any sub could. Submarine can't go too fast. So keep moving and stay out of their way.
Where did you land in Europe?
Oran, North Africa.
Describe the first thing you saw.
Kind of a sorry-looking city, pretty hot, and the quarters there were just about battlefield quarters.
How do you get 10,000? How do you get 10,000 plus men off a ship?
I use every ramp you can send down the side. It takes a while to empty the ship.
From this port in Africa, you were assigned to what unit, what division, what army?
They had a replacement depot there where men coming in and men going out were assigned to ship for either going home or going on into Europe.
And where were you sent?
Salerno, the camp there at Salerno, and into a overnight in tents, and then went up with a assigned to duty at that time we were at Rapido River and under Monte Cassino.
You fought in the Battle of Monte Cassino?
I was on our side of the river. Fortunately, I wasn't in the river crossing, and they lost about 3 companies trying to get across that river.
Was that your first battle?
Yes. At that time, I was an artillery crewman, so I wasn't right in the enemy's face like the infantry was.
What was your job during that battle?
Well, I was put in as I started as a 105 crewman, and I was supposed to be a battery clerk, but they didn't need a battery clerk. They need some soldiers. So soon after that was a telephone lineman, and they put me in the FO, Field Forward Observer.
As a lineman, did you stay with the same unit you were attached to, or were you sent to a different unit?
Oh, I was in 131st Field Artillery, but they worked with the 141 Infantry Battalion. So actually, as soon as I made a field forward observer, my duties changed.
What is the job of a field observer?
Observe where the enemy is and make zero in them and radio that back to the infantry so they know what the power, or get an idea of what size forces we had to take in.
And how would you do that job?
Well, you go out there and look for a place that you can get a good view of the country. And, of course, the enemy is looking for us, too. But you give the quadrants, radio them back to the field commander, and go from there.
What's your most vivid memory as a field forward observer?
Well, of course, nothing tops the Lost Battalion experience. That was the worst. And there were some good points, though. We were some of the first into Rome, rode in on jeeps around the Colosseum, and the ladies were all coming out with bouquets of flowers, bottles of wine. We had a royal treatment on our liberating of that city.
How did you end up working with the Lost Battalion? You're from California.
Well, as a replacement. They were mostly Texas, and I would say quite a few of them from Alabama.
What was your impression of soldiers from Texas or Alabama versus soldiers from California?
Well, they kind of spoke a little bit different language, but you learn it after a while. And I found that they were very good guys to be in that kind of situation with.
How were they good?
Well, once you got to know them, they're very friendly, and they're good soldiers. They were trained well.
Were they predominantly Caucasian? Were there any ethnic mixes in there?
I don't think so. I think it was pretty much all Caucasian.
Okay. Your first battle, going back to Monte Cassino, what was the most vivid image that you saw? What struck you the most, even though you weren't crossing with the troops? What do you remember?
I just remember that we didn't get much sleep. We'd go 4 or 5 days sometimes without sleep.
Okay, tell me a little bit about the Lost Battalion. After your campaign in Italy, you moved up into France.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about, let's see, you fought Monte Cassino, and what was the next battle that you fought?
I believe it was Velletri. I'd have to check on that, but I think it was in the Velletri area, and then the run for Rome.
After Rome, y'all were sent directly to France?
Yeah, we were taken out of the line and back into Naples, where we loaded on troop transport to go to southern France. Excuse me. Okay.
Good. Okay, so you're in southern France. What was the first battle that you fought in southern France with the Lost Battalion?
We really didn't have any fire until we'd gone through Lyons. It was pretty easy pushing through that city, and we were pretty much chasing the Germans pretty fast until the Vosges. And that's where I think Hitler told the Germans, take no prisoners. And they had us surrounded there in the Vosges with no water supply and no food. So we started, you get your water with melted snow, and we tried bringing in food by air artillery shell, taking out the explosives and putting D-bars and stuff like that in there. And that pretty much was the food we got, and whatever we could get off the ground in the way of water. Unfortunately, some of those shells hit some GIs too, so that wasn't too nice. But that was a situation with not much area to fire in, and was extremely hazardous.
Had you made your way into that area unknowing what the surrounding topography was like, and that you would be in a tough situation?
Well, the head guy decided to go too far too fast without watching flanks. And Dahlquist was very instrumental in that, I think. I wanted to see how far he could go, and it was a little bit too far at that time. So they finally wound up being surrounded because they're not watching the flanks. Dahlquist said, keep going, keep going.
Now, at the time, did you feel keep going was a good thing to do, and that you were on the heels of the enemy?
Yep. We were ready to push them back into Germany. Didn't quite make it.
Now, prior to moving into southern France, had you heard of the 442 100th Battalion?
No.
No idea who those people were?
Mm.
You were just on your mission.
Yep.
When did you begin to be trapped in that forest area? Do you remember the time? October?
Not really.
No?
There's a lot of, I don't remember. I think I was kind of going on remote control.
Why is that?
Well, I was scared, and I was doing what I was told to do and no more. I wasn't one of these heroes that could charge a machine gun nest with grenades, but I just did what somebody told me to do. And I wasn't thinking a lot of the time about what I was doing. I was doing what somebody else told me to do.
How did the other soldiers you were with react to being trapped in this forest?
Well, we were all trying to cope with it. It was wet, it was cold, and most of the time we didn't know where we were going. They didn't distribute that information down to the lower troops because they're just caught. They'll try and pry out information on them. So only the officers most of the time knew where we were going.
How many days were you trapped in that forest? Do you remember that?
I think it was about 8 or 9.
What, when you said that you and your fellow soldiers coped with being in the forest, trapped, how did you cope with it?
Well, by that time I was so sick with amoebic dysentery and hepatitis and down to about 119 pounds that I wasn't really doing much good.
Did you know that you were surrounded?
Mm-hmm.
What did you think would happen to you?
Well, I didn't know what Hitler's order was, but that was supposed to be the deal, that he took no prisoners.
But at the time, even though you didn't know that, what did you think would happen?
I really didn't know. I didn't like the idea of a POW camp in Germany.
The orders that Dahlquist gave for the 442 to come up and begin the rescue, had you any idea that Dahlquist had ordered that?
No.
You had no idea the 442 was coming?
Mm-mm.
What was your first image or visual that you of the 442?
Well, it looked like a bunch of little kids with American helmets on them. And I didn't know what to think, really, that these people are rescuers. They're the ones that broke through at a heavy cost, around $800, I believe, to get 210 of us out of there.
Were you, where were you when you first saw the 442 come in?
I know, I think, I can't even remember. I just remember these little, I was about out of it anyhow at that time, but I did know enough that these little guys looked like they were on their side.
Why's that?
Well, they were really, really great. They ran into so much fire to break the initial hole in the bulge, in the Lost Battalion. I think that's about the same time as the Battle of the Bulge was going on up north from us. And I think the whole thing was Hitler's last big hurrah to try and stop the advance.
When you first saw the 442 break through and reach you guys, did you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? How many at one time?
I think maybe I only saw 2 or 3. Because, like I say, I was just trying to stand up or sit down.
Did you have an opportunity to talk with any of them?
No, I did not.
Did your fellow soldiers tell you, since you were kind of out of it with a medical condition, did your fellow soldiers tell you what was happening?
No.
Once the 442 broke through, how did they pull you, the Lost Battalion, out of that enclosed area then?
Well, they just pushed the Germans back so that we could withdraw. And like I say, they had 800 men involved in injuries. So I was pretty much out of it by then.
When you were evacuated from the Lost Battalion because of the medical, how did they evac you?
Well, I went to a field hospital and they took me out on a ambulance, and we went through a valley that was still controlled by the Germans, so we were being shot at as we were going out that pass.
And what was at the end of the pass? What was the destination?
It was to a field hospital, and then I was put on a hospital train to Paris. Just there overnight, and then put on a airplane and flew over to the Bristol area and to Frenchy Hospital, which is built by the Americans for American soldiers. And it's kind of ironic that I would go one day back to England, go to Bristol, and find out my host over there was only a block and a half from the hospital. So that was a kind of coincidence. But I was there, I guess, about a couple of weeks and put on a hospital ship to be sent home. Came back to, where was that? one of the courts on the, what is that thing? I should remember that. Anyhow, it was good to see. This was America.
What's your most vivid memory when you first saw America again after having gone through this experience?
It was never looking so good.
What never looked so good?
I came in, I guess it was a port in South Carolina, and then I went to a Army hospital at Swannanoa, North Carolina. That was a big resort that had been taken over by the military. And after a few days there, I got a medical leave to, en route, I could stop by and see my wife, and I was up to Oakland Medical Hospital. I guess about the 4 or 5 last months of my service was in hospitals, trying to get me straightened out.
Now, as a GI, you're ground level. People make orders and you follow them. When did you begin to piece together the whole story of the Lost Battalion and who these guys that rescued you were?
Well, that's kind of hard to say, because it's only been in the last 10 years that I wanted to try and remember it. But I feel I need to give out the story of what happened. And that's I'm training myself now for that, to give it to high schoolers if they'd like to have it.
So you're working with a group to go to high schools?
I'll just be Lakewood High School.
Very good. Since you say now it's only been the last 10 years where you're really starting to talk about this and bring it up. The story of the Lost Battalion, that battle is one of the 10 most important battles in U.S. Army history from a lot of the books I read. When did you understand the significance of that battle and then realize that you had been a part of that?
Well, I knew a little of it after I got into England, got some accounting of it.
How much accounting? What did you know at that time?
Well, there were some articles in the papers that they had around there, talking to some other GIs.
And then that was when you started to get an idea of it. When did you begin to get a much bigger picture of it, understand a much bigger picture of it?
I wouldn't say until maybe 15, 20 years. I just had pushed everything out of my life that had anything to do with it. And I hated 4th of July because there's so much noise, banging. I still don't like 4th of July, fireworks.
How loud was it when you were trapped in that forest?
Well, it was very loud. Of course, they were firing into that forest of Germans, and it hit these trees, and shrapnel would come all over the place. And there wasn't any safe haven in the area. You never knew when one was going to hit a tree and shower down. Excuse me.
And we have speed.
Okay. So you're in the forest, and the screaming meanies coming in, blowing up, trampling down, nowhere to hide. What other weapons were used against you?
Well, they were trying to rumble in with tanks, and ironically, they were running out of gas, out of fuel. And I thank my good friend who was flying nose gunner in a B-24. Most of their missions were going over the Ploester oil wells, oil fields. And it deprived Hitler of a lot of fuel for his tanks. A lot of them were running out of fuel right up close to the front line.
How close?
Well, they get maybe 500-600 yards from us, and they're out of fuel. I think that was a big factor in being able to stop the Germans where they did.
So they had the Screaming Mimes, the tanks. What else?
Oh, rifle fire.
What kind of rifle fire? Consistent, intermittent, heavy, not heavy?
Well, the Germans had a way of wanting to keep you up all night. So 24 hours a day, you could come in any time.
What kind of shelter or protection did you guys try to create?
I think about all I had was my sleep roll, my bedroll. One with canvas, you know, so I put that over, get you halfway covered up.
What about digging foxholes, the trees that break down, build them up? What inventive things did you guys do to try to protect yourselves from enemy fire?
Well, there was some lumber laying around, and we had to have a small shovel to peck away with, and so we built some pretty fair shelters out of some of the limbs, and try to get down at least maybe a foot below level. Put some branches over us.
Ground easy to dig through or difficult?
Kind of makes you, if you hit the right spot, you were lucky.
Did you see many of your comrades fall?
Crawl?
Fall. Die.
Yeah, I think one or two.
Had you seen the carnage of war prior to being trapped and fired upon by the Germans in this forest in France?
Mm-hmm.
Had you ever seen a German up close?
Yeah. I've walked by quite a few dead ones, and to my knowledge, I didn't kill any Germans except by helping direct the fire. So I don't have a personal feeling about any German that was dead.
We have
What was his brother's name?
Jeb?
Jeb.
Is it Jeb Bush? He's the governor of Florida, right?
No, this is one, the father.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure. Okay, anyway, we're back in France.
Okay.
1944, October 27th. What illness did you contract during when you were with the Lost Battalion during that time you were trapped?
Hepatitis, maybe dysentery.
When the 442nd broke through and began to push the Germans back, what did you see happen?
I didn't see a whole lot. Because like I say, I was really out of it by then. I had a fever of 105, and that qualified me to go to the rear.
Okay.
My urine was almost a dark brown. My eyeballs were yellow. So everything I saw in yellow.
It's a good color to see at that time, huh? Okay, so then you're evacuated, sent to England, then back to the U.S. You spent some time in hospital here up in Oakland.
Mm-hmm.
How long were you in hospital?
I think for the last 4 or 5 months I was in service.
How did you hear that the war was over?
You know, I can't remember.
After, how were you released from the Army?
I was in Oakland. Army Hospital, and at the Presidio of San Francisco, and that's where I got my discharge. I had enough points to come out.
Where'd you go from there?
Right back here to Los Angeles. My wife stayed with her parents in West L.A. while I was over there. And just awful nice to get her and hold her. He worked hard while I was overseas, working for a bank. And, you know, that was a long time to be away. About a year and 2 months or something like that, across the pond.
What's the first thing you did when you saw her?
I don't remember. I think I just grabbed her, gave her a hug.
You have to fix his microphone again.
Okay. Okay, you're discharged from hospital in Oakland. You're out of the Army. What did you do to rebuild your life here in the U.S. then?
I went to college on a GI Bill. Graduate of Woodbury College. And then went into the trucking business in 1949, I think it was. And after graduating from college with a business degree, I went into the trucking business. And my best friend that I'd seen over in Italy at Vosges Air Force Base, he went through the same college, and he married my wife's twin sister. So we were together from 5 years old clear up to where she was married to my wife's twin sister. And I kind of togetherness for a long time with the family. I was the one that introduced Wendell to her sister. I said, I got a real good gal over there. She's got another one. She's got a twin sister. Says, why don't you come meet her? And a lot of this was, I can blame on the First United Methodist Church, because we were involved in an orchestra and choir in those places.
What did you study in college?
Business administration.
And then you worked for a trucking company. How long did you work for them?
21 years. Wait a minute, 29 years. 29 years. I was discharged on disability because of heart attack. That was 1978.
During your time with the trucking company, how many Japanese Americans did you meet?
Well, my first experience was I was office manager and claims adjuster, and we did a lot of business of hauling frozen and fresh fish through the fisheries in downtown LA on Central and down in the San Pedro area. Most of those fish houses were owned by Japanese fishermen. And so I formed some pretty close friendships with both the Italians and the Japanese. Went to some great dinners with those guys. When they put on a feast, it's really all-encompassing. And we always, one fisherman company would have a turn, you know, so it went around the different ones doing the dinner. They all try to outdo each other as what the kind of fish and just how good it was and everything. So I can't ever forget those.
When did you start to put it together that your Army experience with Lost Battalion and the Japanese Americans you were meeting through your work after service, any relations there?
No, I really didn't talk anything about the war with them, but I just developed a lot of friendships of people who were down there.
In the last 10 years, you said you've begun to open up and remember your experiences and willing to talk about them. What made you change your mind? Hang on just a sec. Okay. Been about the last 10 years, you said now, where you've begun to think about and talk about your experiences during the war. What changed to make you want to open up like that?
Well, I kind of realized that the next generation is going to be all forgotten. And so anything I can impart to the young people of today, that this is what happened then, that you don't want to happen again. You don't take one segment of people who are American citizens and put them in an internment camp when they haven't broken any law. I mean, it's like they're guilty before tried. And we don't want to happen to any segment of our country again like that. Jailed without trial.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I had jailed without trial.
When did you begin to feel this way about?
Well, of course, I've had a lot of Japanese friends anyhow, but we took a vacation over to Hawaii. My wife's sister lives there, and I had corresponded with some people over there and found out they were going to have kind of a reunion of the different groups in Hawaii, and had an opportunity to meet about 40 there at that meeting with...
Let's stop just a sec. Okay. Okay. You say about 10 years ago you began to feel as though you could talk about some of your experiences.
Mm-hmm.
What led you to that?
Well, talking with different Japanese friends of mine, I didn't even realize that there was so much discrimination against people of Japanese. That's it. I lost a word there. Japanese American. It happened. I learned a little bit then, and about 5 years ago, we went over to Hawaii on Oahu to see her Lorraine's sister, and some friends of ours over there, a retired colonel in the Air Force, had a home over there, and I didn't know he was a retired Air Force colonel, but he flew the B-29s. So after talking a little bit about the war, and he says, well, there's a group of the 442nd right down in, not very far from where he was. So I went there and I had a chance of meeting about 20, 25 at this meeting. And, I just thought that what happened to them, like, got so many friends in that category that I just want to try and pass this story on so the generation beyond that will completely forget it. They don't know much now. And how they're going to pass this on to generation to generation. It's a story I don't think should ever be forgotten.
The 25 or so Japanese Americans you met who were in the 442, what was their involvement in the rescue of the Lost Battalion?
Well, I don't know. You mean who is doing what?
Well, or were they involved in that part of the campaign?
Yes.
Did they talk with you about it? What did they say to you?
Some of them were in the Lost Battalion group, but there were others that were MIS that had served in the South Pacific, and there was the 100 too. They always get downplayed, the 100. everybody knows the 442nd, but they don't know it's the 100th there too. And what was it, the 155th Field Artillery? But they don't get as much publicity as the 442nd. But they all deserve it.
As you began to talk more about your war experiences, you say you want to tell the story so people don't forget. What audiences are you planning to address, or have you talked to?
I have talked to some at our Methodist Men's Club, and also Bellflower Ways Men's Club. But try to get high school, maybe freshmen or sophomores, and do as much as I can with that.
What would you like to say to them when you do give your speeches, or you do get a chance to talk? How do you approach the subject of Japanese Americans, 442, racism, internment camp? What do you say?
Well, pretty much tell them what my experience was, and I had my first contact with them, pointing out the fact that these were American citizens that were put into a detention camp for no good reason, and confirm that we should never take a group guilty as not proven. Is that said right?
I don't know. It's you.
Yeah.
That's what's important.
Anyhow, it's a thing we don't let happen again.
How have people reacted when you tell them your story?
Some have never heard about. A lot of them don't even know anything about World War II. Period. So a lot of legwork to be done on any part of it.
You also tell them about the Lost Battalion, and that you were part of that group. How do they react to you being surrounded by Germans and in that kind of a combat situation?
Well, it's I really don't know.
So let's jump a little bit backwards to you're released from the hospital in Oakland, and you come back, and now you're reunited with your wife, and you work for the trucking company. What hobbies or other groups have you become involved with?
Well, I could say Wise Men, and
What is the Wise Men?
they are a service organization supporting the YMCA, helping with fundraising and work projects and things like that to give the Y support. And we're in about 66 countries around the world.
How long have you been working with?
1956. It's about time we moved out here to Lakewood.
And have you traveled much with this group?
Yes. I've been to England, Scandinavian countries, Germany, Switzerland, Singapore, Japan. Did I say England? Yeah. Plus several in the United States, like Minneapolis, Denver, northwest part of the world, the state, and numerous other ones that I can't remember all. I got to make a map and show her.
And again, specifically, what does your group do with the YMCA support?
Yeah, financial and help raise funds and things that need done at Y, fixed up. We do that too.
As time has passed and you look back on your experiences in the war, how did that affect your viewpoint, your life, right after the war until now? How's this experience affected you?
Well, it's what taught me life is very dear, that if you got through this war, then you have a purpose in life. There's something you should do to pay back, so to say. And I still try to do that.
Good. Have you gone back to Europe since the war? You had mentioned.
I didn't quite get back to where action was. I've been back to, let's see, I've been back to England, close to France, but not quite. They do offer a tour every year to go to all the places where the 36th was, but it's expensive, and I don't know if I could take that harder run nowadays. The schedule is pretty stiff.
Are you involved with any groups that meet who represent the 36th, or do you travel to meet guys from you?
We have a reunion both of the 141st, at which we usually will have some Japanese Americans attending that, and the division itself has a reunion every year. That's this year it's going to be in Irving, Texas. The year before that was in San Antonio. It pretty much stays in the state of Texas.
And I understand Texas gave you a plaque.
Yeah, then Governor Bush sent me a declaration that I'm an honorary Texan because I fought with the Texas Infantry Division.
Is there anything that you'd like to talk about that we haven't talked about so far?
Can't think of anything.
Let's see, does anybody else have any questions or anything else we think we could ask?
Yeah, we have speed.
Okay. Now, I understand you have a number of children?
Yes.
Okay.
I have 2 boys, 2 girls.
And what are their names?
Jim, Tom, Thomas, and James, of course, and Linda and Marilyn.
Now, I understand 2 of your sons also have served our country.
Yes, Jim was in Vietnam on two different tours, and my son Thomas was in the Navy, and he was on an aircraft carrier in the Persian Gulf. And then when he finally got out of there, he wound up on a LST, up Saigon, up the Mekong Delta. They used it for a fire gun. They got all kinds of space for rockets and the whole works. So he had 2 different places he served.
How did you?
And they all came back clean, no drugs, no problems. They weren't messed up with drugs. For that, I'm very thankful.
As a parent, how did you feel about your child going to war?
Well, I was proud of them. I would have been disappointed if they'd been a Dodger. They both did their part, and I'm grateful for that.
As a soldier who had experienced a lot, seeing your sons go to war, how did you feel?
Well, first, we were very anxious for him, and did a lot of praying for him, and they God answered our prayers.
Okay. Nowadays, you've been a donor to Japanese American cause. Tell me about that.
Japanese American
Cause.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe I had a New York accent there. Yes, I'm a promoter of the cause.
How do you donate? What is your membership in
Yeah,
what organization?
it's a donor, and I intend to keep on being on the donor list.
And what organizations do you belong to that are support Japanese American cause?
I'm not directly connected with any of the Japanese American groups, but I've gone to some meetings, and Frank is going to try and get me in on their dinner. Was on the 7th of February. I've got it on my calendar. I'm just waiting for Frank to tell me if he can go.
You've attended some meetings with in this area here in California, guys from the 442-100s.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about those meetings, who you met, what they were like, what your involvement was.
Oh, this is down there at their clubhouse, and I was very impressed with what a beautiful place they have there, right down there practically on the freeway. But I had a very nice chat with different individuals, and then I said a few words to them after their business meeting. And that was kind of a thrill to see some of these guys that I didn't remember from 55 years ago, but by name, but there's some faces that look familiar.
Who looked familiar?
Oh, I don't know. There are several different ones, and I can't put names with faces right now. I could if I can remember my family's names.
You've gone down to see the monument in Little Tokyo. Describe it for me. Describe how you feel about it.
Well, I think it's a beautiful setting that they have there, and certainly the slab is pretty awesome when you get back and look at the whole thing. And that, along with the museum, makes a trip worthwhile out of it.
Is there anything particular about the monument, just not in general terms, but something specific that caught your eye?
Well, the overall slab, of course, does. And then when you get put in the right spot, these pillars, they're sitting around, I think that's real impressive, too. They've done a good job on that. I didn't understand, though, why some of the names were on the sidewalk or stones, the floor, and some were in the black pillars. What was it? Do you know what the distinguishment is on that? What makes it
sure.
name down here or name up here?
I think the names were, the monument is in sections, the pillars, or the, not the pillars, the blocks of granite, the slabs, and it was just get the names on there. And they just it wasn't alphabetical, or there wasn't a real system, as I understand it. It was just get them on there. So so they would fit. Yeah. And they'd have a little extra room to add if they needed to add anyone, which they have. So that kind of thing. So there's no real rhyme or reason to it. It's just to make them fit and get them on there.
Mm-hmm.
The Armed Forces Day Parade.
I beg pardon?
Armed Forces Day Parade. He
Oh.
goes to that.
He what?
He goes to that.
Oh, tell me about going to the Armed Forces Day Parade.
Yeah, that's it was kind of fun. I got to go up there and ride in a troop carrier, and I think it was Sam Kanaka that told me about it, and we went up there together. Another time I went up there by myself, and I've enjoyed both times the experience of people waving the flags and stuff like that. Shows that there are still some patriotic people in the United States that will go to a parade and of that kind. A lot of people wouldn't dream of going to a parade, but I think this was kind of special.
Who did you ride with?
Oh, who did you ride with?
I can't think of the name. I've got some photos of some of the people that I was with, but I can't tell you their name right now. Do you want me to take a quick look?
What values do you feel that your parents gave you that helped you through your war experience and then later in life?
They gave us a very good, start again. My parents were very church-minded, United Methodist. And by the way, that George Bush is a Methodist. It's the first time we've had one in the White House. And made us see that we went to Sunday school, and they gave us discipline, but not brutal discipline. The lines were pretty well set, though. You towed those. And it was through the Methodist Church, really, that I met her in a roundabout way. They've told us to be honest and pretty much follow the golden rules.
What's the golden rule?
The Ten Commandments. That pretty much covers it. I don't know if I could give them to you in order, but yeah, wonderful parents and the proper amount of discipline have given us a good sound basis to start our lives on. And all my brothers and my sister were all wonderful people. And when you can think of nothing but good things about your brothers or your sister, and we still all get together, I feel well blessed for that. And they pretty much have the same about that as I do.
What values did you try to pass to your children?
Well, to be honest, and I encouraged them to go to church. I didn't make out very well on that, but that's the way the younger generation is doing. That I think they're all pretty much on the line anyhow. So I've been well blessed on that.
What did your father say to you after you were drafted and you left the family to go to war?
You know, I can't remember. I don't. I think he was proud of it, that I was heeding the draft call.
What did you say to your sons when they left you to go fight?
I told them I was proud of them and good luck. And they both had good luck.
Have you ever told your story to your children?
I think so. Maybe not the whole package, but just to remind them that if we have to defend our country, we have to defend it.
They've already done that.
Mm-hmm.
I just heard a voice over your right shoulder. Who was that?
That's my darling of 60 years.
How many years?
6-0.
And describe her for me.
She's a lot of fun to be with. And I think she's the most beautiful girl in the world. And we can go through battles and come out always winners. And I think the advice on marriage is never go to bed at night mad at each other. Yeah, have a kiss before you go to sleep, so you don't have to stay awake and think about it. I could never sleep when if I didn't give in.
Who wins most of the fights?
Well, kind of even. I think we even out pretty well.
You're celebrating your what anniversary?
One coming up is 58. And that'll be 61 years we've known each other. I think I'll keep her.
Very good. Millard, thank you so much.
Well, you're sure welcome, and I
Really
hope
appreciate it.
this little bit will make people's minds work, that things that they may have to do someday, and let's pray that we don't have to.
Just take 1 minute for me, one last minute, just to make absolutely sure. Anything else you want to say about anything?
Just can't think of anything now.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Well, you're most welcome.
He has some pictures.
Yeah, we're going to, that's what I was just going to say, we'll stop the tape and then we'll grab some of your picture.
Please tell us who this picture is.
Say when.
And go.
Yeah, this is my graduation picture from the 75th Infantry Division training. This was taken in 1944, prior to my going overseas as a replacement to the 36th Army Division.
Great, thank you. Okay. We're doing good.
Okay.
You want to come here, Richard?
Oh,
I was just kind of curious what...
Do you want to get another picture in there?
Yeah. Richard, you could ask some of these questions if you like. We're just going to describe what these...
It's up to you guys, whatever.
Let's see.
over $1 million a year.
Why don't you describe the picture we're looking at the moment?
Yeah, it's one of my best buddies, Sidney Fleischman. We're having a little chat by candlelight in a pup tent.
Do you remember where you were when you...
This picture, I think, was taken at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, out on basic training field maneuvers.
Can you describe how big the inside of a tent is?
Well, it might be 6 foot on the long way and about 4 or 5 on the width. Pretty cozy. Not a whole lot of room to fool around in.
Let me cut in and out of their films. And we have speed.
Okay. Would you describe the picture we're looking at?
Yeah, this photo is taken in France in a building that kind of like a barn and house. And one of my best buddies was standing right by the archway of the front here. And I heard a sound like a chord on an organ, and very much thinking it's screaming babies coming in. And I told my friend, let's get out of here, into the back of the barn. And suddenly that one of the shells hit right on the entrance, right here where he was standing. So it's just little pieces of him all over the inside of that barn.
Okay. Stand by. I'm just doing some B-roll.
Which one of them was in the picture?
Is he in this picture?
No, I'm not.
No.
Is your friend who was killed?
Yeah, he's right there in the,
Which one is he?
right over here.
Okay, he's the one in the far right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe you can point at it from above.
Let me get it set for. How's that, Jason? Okay. Now, if you could just reach down and point, like, watch me, where I just point like there, down there to the guy, but don't touch the picture.
Okay.
So, and what was your friend's name?
You know, I can't think of it
Okay.
unless I got it here. Here we are.
Oh yeah, it's got names here. I'll read them off to you. Okay, what picture are we looking at now?
This actually is when I was in the 75th Infantry Division, and this is part of our training at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
And these are infantrymen in the 75th?
No, I field artillery.
I'm sorry?
Field artillery.
Field artillery.
Speed.
Okay, could you describe the picture we're looking at now?
Yeah, this is in the Vosges Mountains, and sometimes we have a little fun playing in the snow, get our minds off of other things. So whenever we had a little lull like this in battle, we try to make the most of it.
And who's the gentleman in the picture?
That's Dorsey Adams.
And what happened to Dorsey?
I don't know. I came out of the Lost Battalion. I don't know where he was. I mean, I left like that. I didn't have time to get my duffel bag. The only souvenir I brought home, I think, from the war was a German Luger. And when I got home, I got to thinking, I don't want the thing in the house. So, yeah, I gave it to somebody to get rid of it. That's supposed to be worth some money.